Good morning, world. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's the Supreme Court hearings this week. Yesterday was Columbus Day and all the shenanigans that was going on with his statues.
But today, we're going to talk about youth sports, especially here in the great state of California, and how the kids today are being used as chess pawns in this whole political game. Stay tuned. I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian, and this is Cedric and Brian. Since yesterday was Columbus Day, it's actually today, the day we're filming. A couple things that I watched that are interesting because, you know, all these people, especially from Antifa, Black Lives Matter, tearing down the statues. They're finally putting them back up, cleaning them up. But they accuse him of things that obviously aren't true. For one, he didn't even realize that he discovered a new world. He literally was trying to find a way around the globe because he was one of the people that were scientific and said, okay, the world is round. Mm-hmm. He was trying to find Asia because the Silk Road was blocked for trade. Mm-hmm. So he was going to say, hey, let's find it for the West. Let's find a way to Asia without having to go through the Silk Road. So he thought he was back in Asia, and that's why he called the natives Indians, for one. And he never colonized. So they call him this colonizer. He never colonized. He didn't even know he was in the Americas. Yeah. So anyway, so we just wanted to touch on that. And then the other thing, big thing going on this week, obviously, is trying to get Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And because she was nominated by a Republican, I don't think, though, however, that they're going to find any rape allegations with this mother of seven. Do you?
No, I don't think so. She's making a reference to Brett Kavanaugh. Yeah. Nor do I think they're going to find any pubic hair on any Coke can. So I think that's going to be a moot point.
Go back and look at history. We bring these things up. You know, we joke around about it. But look at the confirmations of judges by Democrat presidents and see if you can find stooping to this kind of stuff.
Right.
And so for Amy Coney Barrett, obviously it's because she's too Catholic. Right. So again,
which is really weird because, you know, Nancy Pelosi is Catholic.
I know.
And Joe Biden is Catholic. But now they're going to pull that.
But she's too Catholic.
Too Catholic, yes. Yes, I get it. Okay, before we get into our topic today, some of you may notice that I am rocking my Kobe Bryant Lakers jersey because at the time of filming of this, my Lakers tied the vaunted Celtics for the 17th NBA championship. Now, as many of you know, Brian's not going to speak on this, as many of you know that I said I was going to watch the NBA, and I plan on watching it next year, and here's the reason why. Ratings went down 30%, and I think it went down 30% because they lost some viewers, they lost some people watching because of what's going on with the BLM movement, but I'm pretty sure next year, all that stuff is going to be scratched, and they're going to get back to just playing basketball, so I hope to be back in the saddle again, watching them play, and just join basketball for the pure sake of basketball. That's a good little segue into sports. We're talking about youth sports today and how they're being taken advantage of as little chess pawns with all this political stuff. Teams like youth soccer teams, and my daughters grew up playing club soccer, which is a big investment of time and money. For those of you who are invested in that, you guys know what it takes. But unfortunately, a lot of these parents and kids are being forced to travel great distances because of the lockdown.
We found an article. It was in the San Diego Tribune, mm-hmm. and it has to do with COVID-19 and youth sports. There's some interesting stuff that Cedric found in this article. Yeah,
it was interesting. Like I said, usually and this article was based upon a youth soccer teams in the San Diego area. Now, normally with youth soccer, you play teams in your general area. So I think when my girls were knee deep into soccer, we would travel to San Diego. We would travel to north a little bit, but it was always really close. But nowadays, teams and kids are traveling hundreds and hundreds of miles to different states that are quote unquote open just so they can play soccer.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring up this article that we're getting this from, and Cedric, you can read from right here from just what he's talking about.
Yeah, it says the San Diego Surf and Del Mar Carmel Valley Sharks practice 3 miles apart. There's a chance in the coming weeks that they'll have to drive 400 miles just to play each other in a soccer game. That doesn't make any sense. They're literally down the street from each other, but they have to travel to an open state just to play soccer. And me growing up playing basketball, there's a lot of youth teams going on. Most of the summer and fall AAU basketball tournaments that are usually held in Las Vegas and Los Angeles, they've been moved to St. George, Utah, just across the Nevada border on Interstate 15. There's a trend to this. Arizona, Utah, and Idaho, red states. California and Nevada, blue states. In short, red states are open Blue states aren't. And the problem is it's really taking a mental toll, not only on the parents, but on our youth. Now, Brian and I, living where we live here, we're part of a national power every year, Centennial High School here in Corona. And then if you go just further north into Orange County, you have some of the major powers like Mater Dei and St. John Bosco. They're not engaging in Friday night lights anymore, like some of the great states of Texas are. I have a friend there, and she says every single high school in Texas, it's religion there. And everybody, the community comes together, and they gather around, they go to the stadium at Friday nights. We don't have that in California, and I think we're going to have that in January. But as of right now, these kids who have been training all these years as youth, they're not getting to play the sports they enjoy.
And some of them, this will affect their lives because some of these are elite athletes, and if they don't get looked on by the colleges that they may end up going to, they may not get these scholarships that they need. Because you're talking about a lot of these kids don't have the opportunity maybe to go to these nice schools, and sports is a way for them to actually get there. And now they're being denied that. And I know that, remember the end of last year, because of this pandemic, a lot of the seniors didn't get to play in their sport.
Right.
And now they're graduated.
Yes, which really hurts in a sport like football, because in basketball and lacrosse and things like that, they have the club teams where you can play year-round. Football, it's your high school season, and that's it. You don't have a chance to play in a club sport. And so like Brian said, the colleges that are looking at these top-notch athletes don't get a chance to see them doing the sport they love.
And then I'll read this in the article, and I'll put this up. The overriding message from this summer of social unrest is to trust the democratic process, to defer the powers guaranteed by the Constitution, to invoke change at the ballot box, to vote, 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 except they can't. They're kids. They have no political muscle. They have no voice. Right. So they're deferring to the grown-ups in the room.
So these kids, like especially in soccer, like I know they've been going to practices and they play games inside the game where they play like soccer tennis, where they put up a net and they kick the soccer ball across to each other because they really can't engage in a competition with another team. So they dutifully stand in a 10 by 10 foot quadrants wearing masks, and they juggle soccer balls for 90 minutes in this stifling summer heat, and that's all they get to do. The only option to do what they love, to express themselves competitively, is to drive 3, 4, 7 hours across state lines to another state just to play a team, which is usually 5-6 miles from where they normally are.
And then the irony is that statistical chance of dying in an auto accident on a 500-mile road trip is many times greater than a healthy child under 18 catching and dying from COVID-19. And I'm going to segue real quick from this just to bring up numbers that I found out. Now, it's hard to find numbers, and I don't know why they make it so difficult, from the actual CDC for the United States, and maybe they do this purposefully. I just wanted a chart that showed by month, by year, deaths, because the big problem with COVID is people on both sides are saying, oh, they're manipulating the numbers this way, they're manipulating them that way. Well, if you just take total deaths, then you really can't manipulate it. People died, so you don't have to know how they died. Did they die of COVID, flu, heart disease, cancer? It doesn't matter. So let's just look at total deaths, period. And I found one from the state of Michigan. So Michigan was one of the states hit hard by COVID.
Right.
So it's not like I'm taking a state like Wyoming, which is a small state. Who knows what the effects are. But Michigan, obviously we know Michigan has that governor who just went through the plot for her kidnap. So Michigan was hit hard. So let me just show you some numbers on Michigan total deaths over the past few years. So take COVID out of it. This is from Michigan, just one state, a state that has about 10 million people. So it's a good sample size. So I made this spreadsheet. I got the numbers from a website that had to do with Michigan, and it was one of the places I could actually find total deaths. So if you look down the left side, you'll see each month and year. So what I did is I made some calculations on the right to make it simple. So in 2019, if you look down over to the right, 2019, the total deaths in Michigan were 16,301. In 2018, the total deaths, this is in Michigan, so this is a population of 10 million, around 10 million. Total deaths were 17,135. That's 2018. In 2020, and this is only through August, because I wanted to make sure that I just took a sample size where they actually got all the numbers caught up for 2020. So for 2020, and you can look to the left and you can see the numbers that I did. in 2018 and 2019. I did the difference. So in 2020, the total deaths through August was 17,336. So if you look at 2018 through August and 2020 through August, so 2020 is where we had these terrible deaths.
Right.
The difference is 201 deaths. That's it. So there has been 201 excess deaths in a population of 10 million. So just let that sink in for a minute. Okay, these are statistics. I did not make these numbers up. And you can look, and I'm going to leave this chart up so you can look at all the numbers month by month. And you can see in 2020, in the month of April, yes, it went up to 13,000 deaths. But there were some months in the past where there was 9,000 deaths.
Right.
But when you look at the totality of it, of that whole year through August, compared to 2018, which was a bad flu season, only 201 excess deaths in Michigan. So I just wanted to bring that up because people are living in fear for something that really, for healthy people, and you just saw a 74-year-old obese man get through it perfectly fine. We won't mention any names because we don't want our channel blocked. But I just want you to say, and if you say, well, we'll look at in 2019, there's 1,000 more deaths than there was. Yes, you're right. There was 1,000 more deaths in a state with 10 million people.
Right.
Do the numbers on that, and you'll get a percentage that is so small. So again, I just wanted to bring that up because we're talking about kids not playing sports because of these deaths. And if you look at these excess deaths, guess what? There's people over 75 for the most part. Kids under 18, the number is so rare. In fact, in some cases, it's more likely, like Cedric said, to die in a long car drive or of the actual seasonal flu at their age range. So right. I'm just going to leave it at there. Let Cedric go back to his talk on that.
It's a good segue back to this. When Brian is just showing the numbers, we're not trying to be insensitive and say we're trying not to reduce people's lives to statistics and numbers. 200 deaths, the human life is important. 1,000 deaths, the human life is important. What we're trying to say is the deaths are about the same. And here's the thing that we do know for a fact, that because these kids aren't allowed to play the sports they love, that the number of suicides, especially among youths, is going up. The number of, and just a few days ago was World Mental Health Day.
Yeah.
Not only is it violating their physical ability, it's affecting their ability to think. And the number of anxiety is going up, depression is going up, divorces are going up, suicides are going up. And this is all because of the lockdown. And this is the first time in our country's history, swine flu, H1N1, this is the first time in our country's history that we've quarantined the healthy. Let the kids get out and do what they do. Like I said, we just talked about it, the risk of taking a 500-mile trip across country, your risk of having an injury or dying is way greater than you catching COVID-19 and dying from that.
Yeah, for that age group.
Yes.
Here is another, I'll bring this up on here too. Physical activity levels were 50% lower than before the pandemic. So the quality of life numbers, and this is researched, and I can bring it back up. This is from, I think, the survey from the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine. So what happens when you take kids who need activity, you lower that by 50%. Now you've got higher anxiety and, like he just said, higher depression and higher suicide. So you're taking a portion of the population that really does not die from this disease. They don't die at any higher rate than other flus and other viruses. Yet we're putting them at a higher risk now for depression and suicide because of it. And why? Because of the adults. The adults in the room are screwing it up for the kids.
Right. And it's really sad because those of you who are adults and you have middle school kids or high school kids, it's hard enough to get them off their cell phones and looking at social media and to get them off their gaming consoles to get outside and play anyway. But now we've taken away sports from them as a release, as an outlet. And
then if you see later in here, they look to see how much the virus is actually spread among these kids. 90,000 players over 10 weeks. So they did this over 10 weeks from 124 clubs in 34 states, some of which held socially distancing practices, many of which were open for scrimmages and games. The results were equally striking. Only a single case of documented transmission from soccer and an overall infection rate of 263 per 100,000 compared to 477 per 100,000 nationally among children in the same age group. And that's just getting it. But they don't die. We already know that. And they rarely get sick. My daughter has friends that are athletes. They're young athletes going off to college. Guess what? They were tested positive. They had 0 symptoms. And as far as I know, they didn't pass it on to any of their family members who ended up getting real sick. And again, we're not saying that people don't get sick and die from this. Obviously, they do. I'm going to leave this document. I'm going to put it in the link so you can read it because it's a good document. It's a good article from the San Diego Tribune.
Yep.
One of the things in the article that's really interesting, and this is what we try to talk about because you've always got people that are just, pulling their hair out, lighting themselves on fire. The key phrase is on balance. So on balance, are you getting a higher risk of kids dying from depression, suicide, or from COVID?
Right.
So, and is it worth quarantining them? And I know we're going to hear back, because we hear back all the time, well, what if they give it to their grandparents? Then you quarantine the grandparent, or you make sure that those kids don't see their grandparents during this pandemic. They're not seeing them anyway.
Right.
So why not let the kids play?
Right. Everything you do, whether you invest in the stock market, you get into a relationship, everything has a risk versus reward thing attached to it.
Yeah.
So you have to find out is the risk of enclosing these kids and shutting them off and limiting their socialization, which is very important for their mental health. Is that worth it to you than catching something that they have a 99.9% chance of surviving?
And not only that, but pediatricians, and I'm going to bring this up, pediatricians have been saying, and I know months ago, the pediatricians, when they were asked, will they send their kids back to school? Overwhelmingly, the pediatricians said, yes, send them back to
Absolutely.
school. So now they chimed in on this, and they said they're speaking up about the spike in depression and anxiety they are detecting at routine checkups. So these are our kid doctors. That's what pediatricians are, for those of you who don't know. So they are seeing this increase of depression in kids. Why are we doing this to our kids, Cedric?
I hate to say it, but I don't believe in the conspiracy theory, but I think there's a political reason for that.
And as you see, and you can scroll through this article, the number of calls coming into the suicide lines from young kids, thank God they're not going through with it. I mean, some cases they are, but just the fact that they're calling just tells you what it's doing mentally to these kids. Not only do sports play a critical component in their socialization, but many find sports are an outlet that helps them cope with their difficult times. Without it, youths are struggling more than anticipated, as many aren't even aware of what an important role it plays in their lives and mental health. We were both athletes as kids. We know how important it was to us, and we came from good homes. For other kids that don't come from good homes, sports is their way out.
Oh, yeah.
Sports are games.
Yeah. Because we know, especially during this times of lockdown, we know that people have lost their jobs. We know that marriages are failing on the rocks. And unfortunately, your kids feel that and they see that. And sports provides that release for them to get out there and let out that pent-up energy and that aggression when they have no one to talk to. And once again, we've taken that from them.
I have a question for you. So Cedric's wearing his Lakers. So we didn't know if we were going to have basketball because these players came down with, they got tested, they came down with COVID. So, oh my God, we basically shut basketball as we know it down, and they ended up going into this bubble. Cedric, I have a question. How many of those players have died from COVID?
A round number, 0.
So again, we're not letting these kids play, which are even younger than the professional athletes here. But 0 have died from COVID, and a lot were tested positive, and that's the reason why they went into the bubble. We're not trying to bring this up as a conspiracy theory, but again, these are numbers you can see. You saw what was going on in basketball if you were one of the few, very few, who actually watched it. The mortality rate of this, you don't die from this if you're a healthy individual. Again, there are outliers. There are always outliers. Young kids die of heart problems on the track field in high school. It's happened in the past. Kids die. But from COVID, they haven't died on any of these high-profile situations.
Right. And I would even argue that keeping them restrained inside will help enhance the fact that they will die from it. You need to get out, get the body going, and get the endorphins going, and get things going. I know here in California, schools are starting to open up a little bit. Hopefully the PE classes, hopefully the sports programs, hopefully that will follow along quickly. But if you're in a situation where your child is at home and they're not doing anything and school's not offering PE class, it is on you. The onus is on you as a parent, guardian, whatever the role may be in your child's life. Get them outside. Take away their cell phones. Log them off that computer, take them off that gaming console, and you go for a walk with them. Go out for a hike, especially in California, there's a lot of hiking trails out here. Get on your bike, get on your skateboard, get outside and get things going, get things moving so that if the kids do catch something, they're strong enough to fight it off.
And please, look at the numbers. I know that you can take and make statistics and interpret them any way you want, but if you just look at the bottom line numbers, and I'm going to leave that Michigan death rate, or not death rate, but total deaths in the description also. So you'll have both the article, you're going to have these numbers. If you're patient enough to go through the CDC, try to find the charts. It's so hard. You can see the excess deaths. They'll show a little blip, but it's all the way back down again. These are important numbers so that we can live our lives accordingly. And people say, well, you don't want people to die unnecessarily. Every time you get in your car and drive, you could die. I mean, it happens thousands of times every year in this country. People die in auto accidents, but that doesn't keep you from getting in your car and driving. You have to balance the risks. The risks for kids of dying from this virus is very, very small.
Yep, exactly. Well, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate you watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, ring that bell, and share this video with everyone you know, especially those ones who have kids in sports who have been quarantined and they're not playing sports right now. But until next time, I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian. See you later.